Has the time come for a lockdown, or is it better to just increase the pace of vaccinations in Mumbai, Maharashtra and the country?
See, this entire COVID carriage has to be drawn by two horses. One is the discipline and the other is the vaccination. The old adage that spare the rod and spoil the child is not faulty. As our epidemiologist very correctly described to us, we had a warm Diwali, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we all celebrated, and that's where the explosion of weddings, gatherings, Maldives, Dubai, holidays, Goa, everything burst on the scene. So we are seeing a surge, and this is not a surge, this is a wave, a tidal wave. And it is this wave that is going to produce herd immunity, because all and sundry, the penthouses in the skyscrapers and the garages down, all of them, we are getting hordes of people positive.
No, so do we need another lockdown? Are you saying the answer is another lockdown? Or is it simply to start vaccinating much faster all age groups?
We have been vaccinating, but you can't only pull the carriage vaccination. There is no discipline. You probably do need a small lockdown, a short lockdown. Because if you don't break this chain of transmission, a circuit is broken. You're not going to allow, because this is a mutant virus. And mutant does not mean bad virus. Mutation means changed. Our reports are showing that the cyclical threshold score in all the positive patients shows a low value. And a low value is bad. But all these patients with low value are relatively less symptomatic as against what we saw last year. So this is a mutational behavior. And as the epidemiologist said, we are seeing milder cases, majority asymptomatic, milder cases. But what all that we are remembering only is the panic of last year. And people call to say, I have diabetes and I have a positive virus, I need a bed. So you need to regulate the beds, you need to prevent the transmission. And the only way you can do it is to have a restricted activity movement. So whether you call it a lockdown, whether you call it a complete lockdown, but people do not remember. There has to be something to break this chain. And if you spare the rod, you're spoiling the child. Because this mutant virus is tame just now. But if it gathers speed, it can mutate it in upward fashion. You could have virulence going up.
Let me take that to Dr. Gangakhedkar, because Dr. Gangakhedkar, you were spearheading in a way the ICMR's outreach when there was the first COVID virus last year. Do you believe, like Dr. Thacker, that we need a restricted lockdown in Mumbai, Pune, across Maharashtra and other parts of the country where cases are surging?
I think it's a tough decision. Now, one thing which science will tell you, that lockdown in the first wave was little logical because the seeds of infection had not perhaps spread across. Now that the first wave is already over, we know it had reached every part of the country. Given that fact, a complete lockdown of the country is absolutely not feasible. It would perhaps have an adverse impact on economy along with the health outcomes that are also likely to be affected. The issue, perhaps, can we have a statewide or such a kind of lockdown? Perhaps that kind of lockdown also I don't think will happen, because when you put up a lockdown and when people are sitting in the house, just imagine the infection has already spread across. A case which is positive is likely to stay back in the household and is more likely to infect others. Perhaps the best answer is the calibrated lockdown that is being tried. You have areas where you are doing containment. There you can actually try and ensure that the mobility is restricted. The person, if he cannot stay or she cannot stay in the household because the house is small, safe distancing or COVID appropriate behavior may not be possible, shift that person to institutional facility where that kind of facility can be offered without affecting the person's...
But Dr. Gangakhedkar, how do you achieve that? There have been attempts made at restricted lockdowns for particular areas, containment zones. We've seen that happening actually over the last year. Do you believe that that can succeed? How do you break the chain? To take off from what Dr. Thacker said, the need to break the chain. How do you break the chain, doctor?
Now, there is one thing which I would say. When there is the number of cases increases tremendously, it puts a huge amount of strain on the public health infrastructure to do testing as well as contact tracing. I know at one hand, doing contact tracing, trying to find out a case and then shifting them is going to be as challenging an activity. But at the same time, is there any other hope that we have which can perhaps break the chain of, we don't see one. Even if you vaccinate, we know vaccine loses its efficacy significantly when it comes to breaking the chain of transmission by way of reducing the risk of acquisition of COVID-19. It is not as effective as it should be when it comes to that. It's effective only in reducing the severe COVID incidence and also the death that is consequent
You're
to
making a very important point, Dr.
Gangakhedkar.
You're saying the vaccines cannot break the chain, so you need something more.